It's a little different just being on the actual NBA court. That's really the biggest difference. Is like you're in the NBA arena playing against another NBA team. That's where all the difference comes from. But it's still just basketball. But obviously, the first couple of times it's totally different.
The Orlando Magic have a pair of home preseason games this week while preseason remains an extension of training camp. Plus, we'll check in on the rookies and give a shout out to the female athletes in our lives and why Orlando needs to bring back the miracle. We'll get to that on today's episode of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. It is October 15th. It will be October 16th, 2023. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to talk about how preseason remains an extension of training camp. It is not just a cliche. We'll highlight some numbers for the first half of the preseason. We'll check in on the rookies, and I'm going to bring it back. I do it every year around this time with the WNBA actually expanding. Hashtag bring back the miracle. We'll talk about that plus the Orlando Pride on today's episode of Locked On Magic. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. It is one of the great cliches. Every single training camp, you will hear a coach say it. You will hear the players say it. You will hear everyone who is involved with the team say it in some capacity. And now I'm going to say it to you. The preseason is just an extension of training camp. I always like to caution people and caution viewers and fans because I've been around the league long enough. You get the rhythms. You understand what means something and what doesn't necessarily mean something. When you watch this league long enough, the preseason's kind of tough to gauge. I think Matt Moore of the Action Network and Locked On Nuggets says it really, really well. Preseason stats and preseason things, you look for patterns, sure, but preseason's not going to be a great predictor of how you're going to do. If you're perfect in the preseason, that's always better than losing, but that's not going to tell you you're in for a good season. If you can't win in the preseason, maybe that is a sign of concern. And I always personally go back to the 2004 season, 2004 season, when the Magic did go winless in the preseason. They were 0-7. And I do remember reading in the Orlando Sentinel back in the day that Doc Rivers said that was an early sign of trouble for that team. And of course, they did end up winning their first game in overtime over the New York Knicks, and then lost the next 19. And Doc Rivers was fired after 10 of those games. There are some warning signs everywhere. But as I say all the time, with some of these things that may not mean anything, it's better to know a team can do something than it can't. And so you look at everything with a little bit of a grain of salt. You look at everything and say, okay, is this real? I don't know. But it's making me think, and maybe making you think is all it needs to do. Every player on the team, now that we have half of the team's preseason games done, has essentially said that, yes, this is an extension of training camp. We know there is plenty more to work on. We know, what we're trying to get done in these preseason games. And that's not necessarily to win, but it's building on what they're working on in these camp scenarios. Now, there are some things that I do think are noteworthy. I don't know if they're real, but they're noteworthy. We talked a little bit about them after the game on Friday's episode, after the game on Thursday. But this team does have a different level of maturity and connection. And I think that has probably been the most evident thing that stood out in these preseason games. That yes, these players are a little bit further ahead than they probably were last year because they know where they're going to be on the floor. They know, hey, when I make this move, Franz is going to cut here, so I got to stay out of the way, or I need to space to the corner because that's where the ball's going. I've noted this. I noted this stat a few times. The Magic had 29 assists total in Tuesday's game over New Orleans and 27 total assists in Thursday's game over Cleveland. The Magic only had 16 total games with 27 or more assists all of last season. A stat that I have been eager to cite as well, and it builds off of the passing, and I think we'll dive into the passing a little bit more later on in the week. The Magic averaged a little bit more than 6 corner threes per game. They have 8, by my count at least, they have 18 total corner three-pointers in these first 2 games. Not enough to make you say, like, okay, that's like a top mark in the league, but it's enough to make you go, that is certainly noticeable. Now, I will grant you 3-point attempts do go up in the preseason because you're getting a lot of teams settling for threes because they don't know quite what they're doing yet. But the fact that the Magic are passing the ball so well and their offense does look refreshed. I know I talked a lot about the offense on Friday's episode. The offense looks different. The offense feels different than it did last year. Now, is it going to be good? Is it going to escape the bottom 10 of the league? We're going to find out. We're going to all find that out together. But the Magic have found some success here in the preseason. And continuity has played a big factor. But they're finding success because their work from training camp and what they've done to build this team does appear to have carried over into these preseason games, reinforcing what they've been working on in practice.
Well, I really like their attention to detail, their focus level, and what's standing out to me the most in these moments is their passing, their willingness to share the basketball, their trusting each other, finding each other in the right spots, and that's what we've said from the beginning. That's the important piece of continuity of a team and bringing that team back together so they know where the next person is and they trust that man next to them.
And look, passing and continuity has been a big piece of this. I think Paolo Banchero said at one point during training camp that it didn't really feel like they had a training camp last year. That last year, because of all the injuries, because they were down so many bodies, they didn't get out and compete the way that they have this year. And so you add not only another year of experience, another year and maturity of focus, knowing what they can accomplish this year, and then you add the competition and the health that this team has in practice, it does seem like things are coming along quicker. From Mosley's perspective, he said, there is a quick carryover. When players are asked to do something, they're recognizing it and applying it in real time. They're often doing this without the coaches having to step in. And that's honestly the biggest thing, is that they're able to make adjustments. They're able to read and understand what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish without the coaches having to do anything. Now, as I've noted too, there's still a lot to clean up. As much as the Magic have done some really good things, as much as the Magic have put themselves in a good spot, and I apologize for the freeze there as I was changing tabs to get to the next point. As much as the Magic have improved in a lot of ways, they're not regular season ready. I've run some numbers. They're ranking pretty high offensive and defensive rating for the preseason, but it's just a preseason. Their starters are winning their minutes. They haven't quite solidified their rotations yet. There is still a lot of work to do. And Tuesday's game is a big one. Tuesday is the dress rehearsal because, again, no offense to Flamengo. I'm always really excited when they come to the building. Their fans bring a lot of energy. They are good. No, the Brazilian league's not the best in the world, but it is a good. It will be a challenge for the players that do play, but you expect the Magic to win that game fairly easily, and it's not. That game is more about what the Magic are doing than prepping for the regular season. All these games are still more about what the Magic are doing. There's still work to do to get us ready for next Wednesday. And that's why these games are a continuation, because there's still a practice Monday. There's still a practice Thursday. There's still a practice Saturday. There's still another practice next Monday and another practice Tuesday. You got 5 more practices before you get into the meat grinder. And that's plenty of time, and 2 games in that too. And that's plenty of time to get this team ready to go. With 2 games under our belts, we'll check in on the Magic's 2 rookies, why it's been a mixed bag for both. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends. Hold on, let's wait for the ad read to let's wait for my internet to catch up with me. There we go. First, it's time for a quick word for our friends over at Gametime. Hey, look, I love going to games. Sometimes, though, it's like a spur of the moment thing, whether it was the Orlando Pride game on Sunday, whether it was going to a Rays game during the summer, whether it's getting ready for the Orlando City playoff game or getting ready for the Orlando Magic's 2 preseason games this week or the home opener next Wednesday. If you want to get to the game, Gametime is your ticket in. Gametime has last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, and it's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in Orlando or wherever you live. You can views from all seats in the venue, and they have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and plenty more. They make buying tickets easy, plain and simple. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total upfront costs. You know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. That's 2 N's. For $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. We're still in that early part of the season, and everyone is always obsessed with rookies. And that's good. You should be obsessed with rookies. Rookies, you invest a lot in rookies. When you draft a rookie, you're invested for at least 2 years, and that is huge capital. I joke all the time, first-round picks are like used cars. Once you use them, they start losing value. So you better get them right, and especially with a franchise and an organization like the Magic. Draft picks are the lifeblood. When you're not going to be able to rely on free agency or on star power to just be automatically attracted to you, your ability to draft is critical. And no matter where you're at. Again, I say this all the time around the draft. You draft who you're comfortable with. Don't worry about what the pundits say. Certainly with Jett Howard, there's a lot of people questioning the Magic's selection of Jett Howard, but that was their guy. They took him. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Take your guy. I would say Jeff Weltman's draft record has been solid, but not sterling. Bo Bamba certainly did not work out. Chuma Okeke is on the last, Jonathan Isaac, really, really talented player, and injuries are probably the big reason why he has not worked out fully. But, again, results matter. Even though we're in this kind of second rebuild with him around here. Chuma Okeke hasn't, we're not expecting him to be back next year. Maybe he has a good year. Maybe he does come back, but I think we're certainly seeing Chuma Okeke, kind of fighting for his survival in the NBA this season if he can get on the court. There is, the draft record is not particularly strong. There are good picks. Cole Anthony looks like a home run, a solid pick at 16 in the 2020 draft. Paolo Banchero is obviously the big one. Getting him right is set everything else up. Franz Wagner's been a fantastic pick, and the jury I think is still out on Jalen Suggs. So the Magic had 2 first-round picks. And, immediately Jeff Weltman and everyone within the Magic said, hey, they're not being gifted minutes anymore. We are not, this is how you move beyond a rebuild phase to a competitive phase when rookies are no longer guaranteed minutes, when your roster is so full and the expectations are high enough that rookies aren't just handed jobs, aren't just handed minutes. That is a big level up. We talk about leveling up. That is a level up. That is taking this team to that next step and to the next step. What we have seen from both Anthony Black and Jet Howard through 2 preseason games, though, is at minimum incomplete. That is honestly how I would describe it. Certainly incomplete for Jet Howard. Anthony Black has needed to get his feet under him. Just plain and simple. He has done some good things, no doubt, but he has had to get himself going. And that's been a bit of a struggle. I like what Jalen Suggs said about it at practice on Saturday, that, his advice to Anthony Black was just to absorb it all in, take it all in, go out there and have fun and, savor the moment. And I think what we see from Anthony Black as the game, as the preseason has gone on, is that, yeah, he's had some struggles, but he is starting to get a little bit more comfortable. And I do expect him to play a little better back at the Amway Center in these 2 games coming up. He's had to kind of find himself and figure himself out here. His statistics are not super impressive. Let's just be real. 6 total points, 3 for 10 shooting. He has 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 turnovers. I do think that he has struggled a little bit to get his comfort level running the point, and has struggled sometimes to kind of be that floor general. Now, granted, I think some of that struggle is the lineup. The Magic are essentially playing line changes, where Black has played with Cole Anthony, Joe Ingles or Gary Harris, Mo Wagner, and Jonathan Isaac. And so you're relying on him to be one of the main creators. In the regular season, he's either not playing, which there's that chance, or Franz Wagner is going to be in that group, or Wendell Carter is going to be in that group. There will be someone else to kind of share that ball handling and even that playmaking load that Black is still getting down. As I say all the time, the goal is to keep getting better, but for now, it's important to look back at where we've been.
It was all right. I think I did a lot of things that I'm asked to do whenever, when I'm gonna play in the real season. I think I defended pretty hard, made some decent reads, but I was just getting into the flow of it, really.
Black has done some good things defensively, so I don't want to just completely put him down. And again, it's Franz Wagner struggled in preseason. Like it's not unusual. It's not impossible. When it clicks for him, it's going to click. And that's kind of the thing with rookies all the time. He's got to wait for it to click. It does, it may take some time. For Jet Howard has certainly been an incomplete. If we're going to give him a grade, and it's not that it's anything on his end, it's just we haven't seen Jet Howard play meaningful minutes, to be perfectly honest. He has played mostly with that deep bench crew, with the Exhibit 10 guys. And look, he stood out among them. There's no doubt about that. His shooting has been excellent. I think he's made 4 of his 10 3-pointers in preseason so far. He went 2 for 5 in the game. He went 2 for 5 in the game against the Pelicans, went 2 for 4. So he's 4 for 9 on threes in 30 minutes of play. He's done some good, decent things. It took that first game against New Orleans, it took him a little while to get going. It took him a little while to kind of see the ball go through the basket and to find his footing. But once he found it, he played pretty well, and that shot started to go in, and you could see why the Magic maybe leaned toward him. His size and his ability to attack off the dribble are really, really important. And obviously this team needs shooting. Like, they're shooting really well in the preseason, or the starters are shooting really well in the preseason. They're the bench, not so much, but the Magic needs shooting. Like, that we know that. And so Howard has value, but we just haven't seen Howard play in meaningful lineups. Like, plain and simple. Like, we just haven't seen him play in meaningful lineups. And I think that's the biggest thing missing from him, because he's done some good things. And I'd like to see him get sprinkled in a little bit more to some of those groups. Even if it's against Flamengo, playing with the starting group a little bit, just kind of throwing him out there, give Paolo or Franz the night off, put Jet in one of those groups, and one of those groups with like meaningful players. And let's see what translates, even against a team like Flamengo. That is the missing piece, and that is something that the Magic will hopefully take care of here in the preseason. When we come back, it was a banner weekend for women's sports, and I'm going to talk about why Orlando should be a part of the wave and why it's definitely time to #bring back the miracle. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at Betterhelp. This episode is sponsored by Betterhelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Get on your way to being your best self. Look, this last 2 weeks have been tumultuous, to say the least. I don't want to dive too deep into the politics of what's going on, but I personally do not know how you can be a human being and not feel distressed over what's going on in the world right now. Especially someone in my position, and knowing, and if you know my history and know my personal history, it has been very, very stressful. And I have personally been struggling to get my emotions and get my thoughts together. I don't believe this is the appropriate space to share a lot of those, but we all have moments in our lives where we're dealing, whether it's external events in the world, whether it is internal events in our lives. We all have moments where we feel like we need to get something out and need to find a helpful listening ear to just take it all in. Sometimes it's just an emotion dump. Sometimes we just need a person to do an emotion dump to give us an empathetic ear and help guide us through some of the thoughts that we've had. I've used therapy for this purpose for a lot of my life. It has been something that has been a staple of helping me get through very tough times in my life, and certainly something that I'm using today to get through a lot of the heartache and grief that is going on around the world. Whether or not you've been in therapy personally, therapy helps so much, even just as having a shoulder to cry on or just an ear that will listen to you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA today. This was a pretty big weekend in sports. The NBA is obviously still a week away. I always want to put focus back on the bigger, I definitely don't like to ignore national stories, and we'll talk about the NBA. I'll do my full NBA prediction show tomorrow. I'll bring out my big board. We will talk about where the Magic stand in the bigger story of the NBA, and I'll put myself on record for freezing cold takes on a few things. We'll do that on next Tuesday for next Tuesday's episode, probably. So there are bigger stories out. There are big stories out there. I won't say bigger stories. There are big stories out there. But if you are a basketball fan, the WNBA Finals has been the thing that a lot of us have been waiting for. The Las Vegas Aces and the New York Liberty have been circling each other, measuring each other, testing each other. Their games have been must-see TV. And today, or Sunday, was Game 3 of the WNBA Finals, with the New York Liberty staving off elimination by defeating the Las Vegas Aces, making it 2-1 in the series, heading to Game 4 on Wednesday. If you've not watched this series, it's been a little bit of a blowout, but these are the best women's basketball players in the world, some of the best basketball in the world. It has been super intense, as you would expect any playoff and certainly any final series to be. And it's been a lot of fun to watch. If you've been following sports in general, though, as the New York Liberty at the Barclays Center had, I think, 18,000. I think they sold out the Barclays Center for this game. Over at Iowa, and I don't like to say nice things about Iowa. Sorry, Joel. I think Iowa packed in Kinnick Stadium for an exhibition game between the Iowa Hawkeyes and the DePaul Blue Demons. Caitlin Clark, obviously a huge star, humongous star. Know her name. She is going to be the number one. She's probably going to be the number one pick in the draft. She is freaking Steph Curry, frankly, with her ability to score and shoot. Their game outdoors at Kinnick Stadium even included a wave to the hospital on the other side of the stadium. If you don't know about the Iowa wave, when you're done watching this show, go YouTube it. It is excellent. Here in Orlando, we had a chance to celebrate a big step by our women's soccer team, the Orlando Pride. They won their game 1-0, setting up a chance for them to make the playoffs. Unfortunately, New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC was able to win, so they tied for the final playoff spot, missing out on that final playoff spot, if I read the tiebreakers correctly, by 2 goals, by goal differential of 2. They were -1. New Jersey, New York was +1. They're in 7th. 6 teams make the playoffs. For the Pride, this was a huge step forward. They've had some crazy turmoil over the last several years. Seb Hines, former Orlando City player, has really come in, stabilized that franchise, did a great job getting that young group to play together. They got better as the season went on. They did exactly what you want a young team to do. And the Exploria Stadium apparently had 8,000 plus fans at the game. One of the highest attended games for the Orlando Pride in quite some time. There should be a lot of excitement for the Pride and what their future brings, even, with Martha coming to the end of her career. But there should be a lot of excitement about what the Pride are building and what they can potentially be as they continue to develop further. We got a lot of fun young teams here in Orlando, between the Pride, between Orlando City, who's 2nd place in the MLS right now, in the entire MLS. They're going to the playoffs. They got one more game left in the regular season before the playoffs start, and obviously the Orlando Magic. It just, all this stuff reminds me how much fun it is to have year-round basketball here. We're seeing this humongous moment for the WNBA, and the WNBA has already announced an expansion team in San Francisco with the Golden State Warriors group. I believe they are set to announce another expansion team in Portland, which has a long history of supporting women's athletics. The Portland Thorns especially have been the flagship franchise of the NWSL, one of the great women's franchises in the entire country. Everyone is ready to jump in on the WNBA. And again, if you haven't watched the WNBA, there are skeptics out there. And if you're a skeptic, you don't need to say anything. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Women's basketball may not be for everybody, but check out Wednesday's game 4. It's going to be really, really fun. It's Wednesday. I believe the tip-off is at 7 or 8. I'll double check the time on WNBA.com. It's going to be a really, really fun game. And these are 2 fantastic teams. If you're like me and you've been in Orlando for a very, very long time, you do remember that that Orlando used to have a WNBA franchise of their own. The Orlando Miracle, I believe, played 3 seasons in Orlando in the early 2000s before the DeVos family, at around the time that they were considering selling the Orlando Magic. They kind of folded the Orlando Solar Bears when the IHL folded, and then they sold the Orlando Miracle to a group in Connecticut, and they were moved to Connecticut to become the Connecticut Sun. We did not know how good we had things back then, though. I remember that first year with the Miracle, the Orlando Arena was packed. The TD Waterhouse Center, whatever it was called back then, was packed. You could feel the energy and the excitement of those teams. And while they were kind of a middling team their few years here, you could really feel the excitement. Even then, I don't think Orlando was ready for that kind of a team and that kind of year-round support for sports in this city. Orlando is a very different city than it was back when the Miracle were around. This is a city that is extremely open and welcoming, is diverse. It wants something of its own to support. It's why Orlando City has taken off. It's why, when they actually promote the Pride and the Pride are doing well, the Pride create one of the best atmospheres, I would say, in the NWSL, and they just haven't given their fans much to cheer about. It's why UCF is such a big thing too. The city wants something to call its own. It wants to welcome the world in. If there's one thing Orlando's known for, it is for welcoming the world. And I think that this would be a great market for women's basketball. Yes, we have not hosted the NCAA tournament like we should. I think Orlando should be much more aggressive going after the women's NCAA tournament as much as it goes after the men's. They've held the Final Four in Tampa over the last few years. And if you're not going to put a WNBA team in Orlando, Tampa would be a great place for a WNBA team too. I don't want to knock Tampa. We like to butt heads a little bit with our friends to the west, but Tampa would be a great place for a WNBA team, and I would support a WNBA team there in a heartbeat as well. I think Orlando would be a fantastic place for the WNBA to return. I don't have an answer for the ownership group or anything like that, but I do know there is enough evidence to my eye that this is a place that would support the WNBA coming back to Orlando. I don't know what the WNBA's expansion plans are. I think they're going to stop at 2 teams for now. That is a league that is teeming for success. That is a league that is ready to just burst and ready to grow and expand. They're having much more than a moment. This is a league that is 25 plus years of existence, longer than any women's professional league in the United States, if I'm not mistaken. They are far ahead of where the NBA was 25 years into their existence. I'll tell you that much. They are not something that's just propped up by the NBA. They are a successful business on their own. And they're ready to take advantage of a moment where there's just a lot of interest in women's sports, and there should be, because they are those women are role models, and they are excellent athletes and excellent players. And again, women's basketball may not be for everyone. And if it's not, fast forward to the end. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. I'm almost done here anyway. It's okay. It's okay if it's not for you. I'm not gonna. I'm here to spread the gospel, but I'm not here to force it on you. This is a really exciting moment for basketball in general, when everyone can see themselves playing. And again, I think Orlando is the perfect community to welcome the WNBA in here. And that's why every time we get to the end of the WNBA season, I'm just like, bring back the Miracle. I want that excitement in Orlando, and I know Orlando would love that excitement here as well. Those are my 2 cents. Hopefully they're listening. Maybe they're not. I don't know. But hopefully you're listening and you go back and watch those games, or you watch Wednesday's WNBA Finals, Game 4 between the Las Vegas Aces and the New York Liberty. Should be a good one. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. For more on the Orlando Magic, also be sure to check out the Orlando Magic Hub by Patreon page at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. Going deeper into Orlando Magic practices and deeper into articles that I'm writing on Orlando Magic Daily. Just kind of doing sidebars off sidebars, as I always do. So if you want the next level of detail on Orlando Magic coverage, join my Patreon page. I am trying to start a community as well. I have a Discord server where you can talk to me as well in real time and be up to date on everything going on with the Orlando Magic. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic. This has been Philip Rossman-Wright. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.